introduce myself. My name is Randy Swanson. I'm the Rhode Island State Chapter President. If you haven't heard about Oath Keepers yet, that's your first mission. Hear about Oath Keepers. Get online, search for it, and then tell all your friends. This is becoming more important every day. The message of reach, teach, and inspire. Military, law enforcement, active and retired, to help explain to them what it means to honor their oath, especially with the news that we've been getting lately. That mission is becoming more important. I want to mention that we're at the Rhode Island State Capitol today. This is the national event being held at every state capitol across the nation, Friday, February 8th at 10 a.m. local time. This is to show support for the Second Amendment. If we don't have the Second Amendment, we don't have anything. And if we lose it here in America, that's going to take liberty away from everybody else. So I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And the flag is up here on the wall. My wife, Anna, is going to sign. So if you'd like to face her, take your hats off. Go ahead, start. Go ahead, start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, a little housekeeping here. Those that would like to speak, probably already talked to me. Just going to line up over here to my left. And we'll start off with a prayer. Rachel, would you help us out? Do you want to hold this?
This is a prayer from my favorite founding father, and I'm sure a lot of other favorite founding fathers here. I found this yesterday, and it's pretty short, but to the point, like Thomas Jefferson always was.
It's not too radical.
If everyone's ready. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people. The multitudes brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with the spirit of wisdom those to whom thy name we entrust, the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among nations of the earth. In the times of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in days of trouble, suffer not our trust in them to fail. All of which we ask through our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to present our common soldier. This is Mr. Frank Dowling, and he will be explaining a little bit of history. You want to stand here? Yeah.
I'm told in Newburgh, New York, General George Washington, in the process of trying to put down a little bit of a rebellion by his officers, who hadn't been paid for months for their service in the Continental Army, took out his speech. You can't hear me?
No, that's good.
Just bellow?
Yeah.
He took out his speech to basically talk to his officers. Their assembly was because they were so angry with the Continental Congress for not having provided all of the promises to fulfill the promises that they had made, specifically for pay and supplies and things like that for them and for their troops, that they were considering, now that the war was largely over, marching on Washington and taking over the government. And to show you the measure of command of George Washington, it could very easily have led them to do that, because they and the men would willingly have done it. He gave a speech in a gallery, and as he picked up his speech, he did like I do, held it that length, and finally reached in his pocket and took out his glasses, which were much more authentic for the period than mine are, unfortunately. And he said, "Gentlemen, I have not only grown old in the service of my country, but very nearly blind." And there was not a dry eye in the house. And when he finished that short speech, that entire convention of angry officers dissipated and went back to do their duty as soldiers of the United States of America. That'll give you an idea of the character of that man. I'm convinced without George Washington, we would not have a country today. He is the linchpin. He was the linchpin. Let me read you some remarks that I prepared. Randy told me I had 10 minutes, so I looked on the computer and I figured out what the expected rate of speech is to give a speech. And I tried to count the number of words to get me to 10 minutes. So if I go over a little bit, I apologize. If I go under a little bit, I apologize. I'm doing my best. In early December 2012, a deranged teenager stole his mother's legally possessed firearms and killed her with them. Then he proceeded to Newtown, Connecticut's Sandy Hook Elementary School, where he killed 20 innocent children and 6 innocent adults. Finally, only minutes after all this mayhem had already taken place, the police arrived. Adam Lanza took his own life, and the violence was finally over. Anyone who does not grieve at the loss of so many innocent, angelic lives is a heartless monster. Anyone who does not pray that their spirits and that of their young mentally ill killer now rest at peace in God's hands is himself a soulless beast. And anyone who would see this as an opportunity to play on the emotionally distraught, the tragically distracted, or the politically single-minded to push through an unconstitutional and actually counterproductive political agenda is a wretched, cynical ghoul who deserves the condemnation of the nation. Despite the inhumanity of the Sandy Hook murders, despite our collective wish we could turn the clock back and prevent them, despite our grief for those innocent kids, we must at some point force aside the emotion and, if we hope to save lives in the future, deal with the realities and not the emotions. Let me give you some of those realities. The number of school kids in the United States every day is estimated at 77 million. The number of firearms in the U.S. now approaches 300 million. 100 million of those are handguns. I would add as well that the population of the United States is approximately 310 million, which means there is one firearm nearly for every human being in this country. Because that consensus, or that census rather, not the consensus, but the census counts them from walking around with diapers on all the way up to guys that are almost as old as I am, which is scary. The number of firearms owners in the United States is 80 million, and 45 million of those own handguns. The number of U.S. households owning firearms is 45%. Virtually half the population is armed. There's a firearm in those households. which is interesting because there was a statistic some time ago, and there was a gentleman who was, I use the term gentleman loosely, he was a college university professor who was trying to prove that this whole myth of American firearms ownership was just that, it was a myth, and it didn't actually work. Well, what was found out was two things. Number one, he was wrong. We knew that already. Number two, he lied in the book and made up statistics. And number three, the number was given that said basically one firearm for every 10 people in the colonies, with 3 million people being the population back then. But if you stop and think about the fact that a gentleman named General Henry Knox and his wife had 11 children, one gun per 10 people means one gun per household. And that was the way it worked. We're only at 45% now. We've dropped off on the game plan, so we probably need to pick that one up. But that'll give you an idea of how prevalent firearms have been as a tool of survival and freedom in this country since its founding. Thus, what we saw at Sandy Hook Elementary is 20 children killed out of 77 million theoretically in school that day. That works out to odds of 1 to 4 million of having been one of those victims. 2 handguns were employed out of 100 million estimated to have been available that day. One killer who was not even among the 45 million legal handgun owners because he stole the guns from his mother just before he killed her with them, was the culprit. Lies from the media and the government about a Bushmaster AR-15, which wasn't even used, although the weapon he chose is irrelevant in and of itself, is actually the case. I've read that that weapon stayed in the trunk of his car, and then he used 2 handguns to kill all those little kids. It doesn't matter what he used to kill all those little kids. If he used a baseball bat or a harvesting scythe to kill 20 innocent children, somebody should have been able to stop him. Any statistician worthy of the title will tell you these numbers indicate this horrific tragedy was an anomaly, not unlike a plane crash or a grain elevator explosion. Statistics available from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration state the chance of a U.S. citizen being struck by lightning are 1 in 1 million. In other words, the chance faced by our school children in America of being a victim in this Sandy Hook school shooting was 4 times less likely than the chance of any one of them having been hit by lightning. Every year on the highways in the United States, approximately 40,000 Americans die in traffic accidents. That works out to a rate of 110 people per day, year-round. And yet those deaths, except as annual statistics or data misused by some self-promoting government safety agency, rarely make the national evening news. But drop a jetliner in the Atlantic Ocean with 200 people on board, and you will hear it, see it, and read about it on every possible media outlet several times each day for several days after it occurs. The reality is, had there been an adult on the scene, armed with a firearm, with the skills to use it accurately, and with the courage to pull the trigger and kill the murderer. And we have to stop using euphemisms. Kill the murderer. There is a good chance that at least some of those 26 innocent people would still be alive.
That's right.
I read another statistic that said in similar instances where a culprit intends to kill as many people as he can, when the police respond to that after the 911 call gets screwed up and somebody finally gets through to the dispatcher, the average casualty rate is about 19 people per incident. When an armed private citizen is on the scene when it happens, the average casualty rate is 2. The first victim is intended murder. The first casualty is the oldest living written national constitution in the history of the human race. It was not predicated on the men in power at the time. It was not predicated on the technologies in use at the time. It was predicated on human nature. And human nature hasn't changed in 400,000 years. And I got some news for you. It ain't gonna change in the next 400,000 years. As we all know, the media are interested in sales generated by sensational headlines. As the old adage goes, if it bleeds, it leads. We have learned to tolerate the media's voyeuristic, sensational, infantile, hyperbolic perspective on virtually everything. In all honesty, we have only ourselves to blame because we continue to buy what they are selling. Fortunately, the worst the media can do is to misinform us, and the internet has given them some much-needed competition. I used to be a critic of the internet, now I think it's the greatest thing ever invented. Ultimately, the media has no power over us under the law. Cynical, power-hungry politicians, however, and let me say that a little louder in this building. Cynical, power-hungry politicians, however, are as dangerous as the most deadly cancers. The current mayor of Chicago, Illinois, is Mr. Rahm Emanuel. Chicago is one of America's crime-riddled cities, and that's just talking about what goes on inside City Hall. Get out on the streets in the wrong part of town at the wrong time of night, and you may be signing your own death warrant. But wait, that city also has some of the country's toughest gun control laws. Mr. Emanuel served, as we all know, as Barack Hussein Obama's chief of staff for a term. While he was in that role during another crisis, he was unwittingly caught on a recording saying, "Government should never let a good crisis go to waste." Let me repeat that for you. Government should never let a good crisis go to waste. I cannot think of a more cynical, unethical, politically disgusting remark to have been made by a political power broker in this country. Translated, he was saying, while these stupid voters are distracted by the accident on the other side of the highway, let's steal their hubcaps.
That's right.
The difference today, however, is Barack Obama, Jack Reed, Sheldon Whitehouse, James Launchman, David Cicilline, Deval Patrick, Andrew Cuomo, Frank Lautenberg, Patrick Leahy, Dianne Feinstein, Chucky Schumer. I have a list with about 500 more names. You want me to keep going? Skip to the point. And the list goes on and on and on. Are all gorging themselves on the blood of innocent children, using it as their good prices, not to be allowed to run away. I suspect there is not a person in this audience who would not call this behavior anything short of ghoulish, reprehensible, and disgusting. Not only do they intend to take advantage of the deaths of those innocents to advance their own perverted agenda, but they are proposing new laws which will only make matters worse. Those children were killed by a culture which teaches them self-defense is wrong. They were killed by policies such as gun-free zones, just like the one at the school where I teach, which is a community college just over the line in Connecticut, which guarantees that all the good guys will in fact be disarmed. The only people who obey gun laws are the people who obey gun laws. A manic student intent on making a name for himself by by living out his zombie-killing video game fantasies will not be stopped by some inane sign which says gun-free zone.
Right.
He's not going to walk up to the door and say, damn, I guess I might as well just go home then. For many years, I misled myself into thinking that politicians were simply being stupid and lazy. That wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the whole reason. After all, the easy way out is to pass yet another asinine, ineffective law and then crow that you did something about crime. Then I began to realize the realities. Politicians and liberals lack the moral courage required to wait until the emotions have subsided and to then discuss facts and realities on a rational, lawful, constitutional basis. Politicians and liberals lack the philosophical courage to realize the world is not the utopia they wish it to be, and that there are bad people out there who will do bad things. Politicians and liberals lack the intellectual courage to recognize no law will ever stop criminals from plying their trade, except the laws which lock them away for long periods of time. Criminals left to roam free will prove the adage crime is always premeditated. Citizens with even a modicum of common sense all know self-defense is never premeditated. I have insurance on my car all the time, not just on days when I think I may be driving on dangerous roads. And finally, politicians and liberals lack the physical courage to realize sometimes violence or the ability to employ violence may be the only thing which can save their lives. Human criminals are not an endangered species. And if my decision must be it's either him or me, I plan to do my damnedest to ensure it ain't me.
That's right.
It is interesting, as you can tell from my gray hair, one of the things I never stray too far away from is men's room. And so I did very quickly before the presentations began, ran upstairs and found the men's room right around the corner. And as I went around the corner, I found a monument to exactly what I just said there. And I can't take credit for the fact that it's here, because it was here long before I guessed this and put it on paper last night at about 4:30 a.m., I think it was. But basically it says, realizing that physical violence is sometimes required. There is a monument up there to the United States Marine carrying an M1 Garand 30-06 caliber rifle similar to the one I own. And he is one of millions of American men, Army, Navy, Army Air Corps, Coast Guard, Merchant Marine, who engaged in violence to stop violence. And they won. The lion does not attack, the hyena does not attack the lion. The hyena attacks the sickly gazelle. And there's no such thing as an endangered species called the hyena. And I have no damn intention of naming a gazelle. The U.S. Declaration of Independence, in that document, says governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Two things strike me about this current rush to ram through these unconstitutional laws. First, if government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed, which is all of you, and it does, how can they think that they have the power to disarm us? They are the servant, we are the masters, not the other way around.
Hoorah!
guns than you need. Saturday night specials are all evil things. Why do the laws always exempt the political elites, their bodyguards, and their agents, as in ATF, FBI, Secret Service, DEA, the alphabet soup goes on and on and on. U.S. postal inspectors carry firearms. Can you imagine there must be some really dangerous envelopes out there for those guys to carry firearms? In another instance here, which really caught my eye, this was in the Providence Journal not long ago, a question came to mind when I saw a photograph. Why does the Johnston, Rhode Island police force need a half dozen fully tactically equipped Humvees, full body armor, night vision scopes, gas masks, and fully automatic weapons? Are speeders and parking violators that dangerous in Johnston? Yeah, there's a picture right there. This looks like a Banana Republic's Army convention is what it looks like to me, not a local police force. And I'll tell you, my gut feeling is if they got them, I need them. That's right. The point on the Second Amendment's mention of the militia, and I mentioned this on January 19th, it's not in here, but I'm going to mention it again anyway. The militia back then meant every able-bodied male between the ages of 16 and 60 who was expected to show up on the town common with his own weapon, with his own ammunition, with his own gear, ready to answer the call, whatever it may be. They had two duties. The first duty, and these come from the English Civil War in the 1640s. The first duty was to stand with the army when the army was defending against tyrants from without. When the King of France or the King of Norway decided to attack England, the general militia stood with the army, shoulder to shoulder. The select militia also did, but the select militia was uniformed, equipped, armed, and fed, and therefore loyal to the king. That's the National Guard. They could be federalized, except they didn't use that term in Britain in the 1640s. Well, in the 1640s, when the Civil War broke out, the Parliament accused King Charles I of treason. He was captured, convicted, tried, and beheaded. And as a result, the select militia aligned with the king, the general militia aligned with the population. So our militia in the Second Amendment is the ones aligned with the people and the parliament. That's the general militia. The First Amendment is either one of those jobs, either stand with or against the army, they've got to have the same equipment to be effective. If I went into battle today carrying this old smoke pole, they'd laugh at me. If I don't have an AR-15, I'm not compatible with the forces on the field. Finally, if someone asks me why do I need an AR-15, my new response from now on is going to be, why don't you think I should have one? I will leave you with this small insight, and the phrase gun control, the word gun is only an adjective. To every gun-grabbing politician out there, the important word is control. I served this country for 8 years in the United States Army, having taken a sacred oath to its Constitution and to the rule of law, not to the rule of men. I can tell you this, if Rhode Island or the USA passes any law which makes owning any of my weapons collection a felony, I will be a felon.
Right on.
I have been persecuted simply for being a firearms owner for 46 years, and I am sick of it. I am not a criminal, I'm a citizen. The path historically has been registration, confiscation, interrogation, incarceration, flagellation, and extermination. I will register no firearm. Biden or Obama. If you want my firearms and the freedom they protect, my answer to you is hold on, Abe. Just on a quick side note, you take a walk to Kennedy Plaza down here, do me a favor, please, and tip your hat to General Ambrose Everett Burnside. Probably not the best Union general in the Civil War, but believe it or not, he was the founding president in 1871 of the National Rifle Association. God bless the U.S. Constitution. God crush any of the
Thank you. This is our own Frank Daly, a common soldier here in Rhode Island. And thank you very much for a very important history lesson.
Thank you, Randy. It's actually Daly, but I'll excuse him.
All right. Yolana has a message for us. She's from Moscow City, and they had to suffer through a lot of history there. Let's listen to what she has to say so we don't have to suffer the same type of history here.
Despite this cold weather and despite the fact that I know many of us had to take a day off because most of us work. We are not welfare recipients. We are not parasites. Also, I know that although the weather is very cold, we are not going to freeze because we have burning hearts and hot blood.
That's right.
Why do we have burning hearts and hot blood? Because we are here to show our support to the Second Amendment, to show our support to one of the fundamental rights we have. And I was going to say the rights given us to the Constitution, by the Constitution, but that would not be correct. This right is protected by the Constitution. This right existed from the day our country was founded. From this very same day, we had a right to keep and bear firearms. And the Constitution protects this right from being infringed by the government. Our lawmakers think that banning guns is going to solve the problems, or banning the video games is going to solve the problem, or banning something else is going to solve the problem. The reality says it is not. The majority of the gun crimes are committed in the area where guns are not allowed, by the people who are not allowed to have the guns, and in the cities with the strictest gun laws, like Chicago, like Washington, D.C., like New York City. And in the opposite side, city of Kennesaw has a low crime rate. And you can say maybe it's not right to force everybody to have arms, but if firearms would cause the crime, Kennesaw would have the highest crime rate in the country. The politicians say us that taking guns from the hands of the law-abiding citizens is going to make us safer, but they don't do anything to crack down on the criminals. They protect them. The very same politicians who wants to take our arms, which have never been used for any kind of crimes, the same politicians are voting against the death penalty. They are voting for lesser sentences. They are voting against the punishment of the criminals. They say the criminals are the victims, but they don't do anything to protect the real victims. The reality says us then the only way to stop a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. The mass shooting where the shooter was stopped by the armed civilians never make it to the top news. And why is that? Because the average number of the people killed in the mass shooting when it was stopped by the armed civilians is 2. If at least one person, be it a principal, a teacher, or an armed guard, or a school police, had a firearm in the Sandy Hook, that would not make in the top news. That probably would be just one victim, and that victim would be the shooter. or it could not happen at all, because he would think twice before going to the place where he had a great chance to catch a bullet. I'm from the country with the strictest gun control, and I know when gun control does not help. Because I remember after the political changes, everybody who wanted to have a gun could have a gun, and they were criminals. And I remember it was simply dangerous for the law-abiding people to walk on the streets because you could catch stray bullets. Banning does not solve the problem. Criminals do not ask for the permit. Criminals do not wait a waiting period. Criminals do not have their blue card to get the handguns. They go to the street dealer and they get whatever they want. And we want to say to all the politicians, we are not going to give up on our guns. We are good people. We are people from whose tax money they get their salaries. And we have our rights to keep and bear firearms, and we are ready to protect it.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know how to put it any more simple than that. The problem apparently is gun-free zones or gun-restricted zones, and the solution, if you think about it mathematically, is pretty crisp, clear. The common denominator is do not infringe. I'd like to present Blake Filippi. He's the National Counsel for the 10th Amendment Center, and he has a message for us today.
Thank you, everyone. I saw Governor Chafee walking around, and I want to thank him for his principled stance voting against the Iraq War years ago, the only Republican senator to do so. And I want to thank him and all the other legislators here in this building for their anticipated support of our natural right to bear arms. I'm from the 10th Amendment Center. We're a national think tank where our mission is the Constitution, every issue, every time, no exceptions and no excuses. And I echo everything the common soldier said about our right to bear arms, and the lady who just spoke, you are all right on. You know, our Constitution was designed to have a federal government of limited powers, and the inverse of it was also to protect our individual liberties, to maximize our freedom. And to that end, the court should strictly construe the federal grants of power. But over the years, these limited grants of power have been vastly construed, so the federal government can now interfere in all aspects of our lives. And inversely, our liberties preserved by the Bill of Rights have been strictly construed, everything from the 4th, 2nd, 5th, 6th Amendment. It's the truth. And the analysis should be flipped. The courts presume federal laws to be constitutional. They should be presumed to be unconstitutional, having to be proven constitutional by the federal government. So, thank you. The idea of sovereignty from our founders was that the individual was the highest order of sovereignty, then the state, then the federal government. Now it's the inverse. It's the federal government, the state, and the individual. And I think that's a very, very scary proposition, and is probably part of the reason that things are so bad now. But you know, a system is only as good as its participants. It's only as good as the people who play the game. And in this case, the citizens have allowed the federal government to break the rules left and right for years. And that is why we are in this mess. Just look at it. We have insane taxes. The government owns such a high percentage of our production. When you look at all your taxes, everything, property, income, sales tax, it comes over 50%. If government owned, or excuse me, if I owned half of what you produced, it would be slavery. But when the government does it, it's okay. We have to understand that taxes limit freedom, and we need to start lowering taxes and free the people from these economic chains. And a little aside, if you don't want something, you tax it. Why are we taxing work? Why are we taxing income? So we have insane drug laws where someone can't smoke a plant who's dying of cancer. We have the National Defense Authorization Act where the government says they can put you in jail indefinitely without trial or charge. We have the Federal Reserve where Congress delegated its monetary authority to a private bank. We have 30,000 drones coming to U.S. airspace by 2020. Boo. The FAA Reauthorization Act was passed last spring. Read it. Bad news. The Patriot Act, you all know about that, shreds the Fourth Amendment. And no child left behind. Teachers, you think that the federal government is on your side? They have decimated your profession. Don't believe your union bosses. And don't forget about our undeclared wars. Libya. Ask the people in Libya if that was a war. Obama didn't even get congressional permission, but he got permission from the UN for a no-fly zone, and then it was bombs away. Unconstitutional. No one held him to the floor, and I applaud Dennis Kucinich for saying that was impeachable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And bank bailouts. Don't forget about giving our money away to the bankers. And the new thing, if you haven't heard of it, not only is it too big to fail, it's too big to prosecute. HSBC was money laundering for terrorists and drug dealers. They got caught. The federal government said, we can't criminally go after these people because it would cause too much uncertainty in the financial system. They've established two classes of people under the criminal justice system. It is deplorable. So aren't our checks and balances, the ones we've read about in school, the federal legislature and the judiciary and the executive supposed to fix all this or prevent it? No, Washington has become infected. We can't depend on Washington to limit its own powers. There are other checks and balances, though, that we weren't taught in school. Primarily, what we do at the 10th Amendment Center is we promote the doctrine of state nullification. Basically, where the federal government assumes power not delegated to it in the Constitution, the states have a duty to interpose themselves and nullify that unconstitutional federal law through noncompliance or standing between the citizens and the federal government. And it's happening all over the country, even in quote-unquote liberal states like here in Rhode Island. Real ID was passed under Bush. It said that all these states have to have very, very hard to manipulate IDs. None of the states complied. Real ID is dead. The NDAA, Virginia last year passed a non-compliance law making it a crime for any state official to cooperate in the indefinite detention of citizens within Virginia. Currently, 13 states have pending NDAA nullification bills. Obamacare, 37 states have pending nullification bills of Obamacare. Yes. TSA, if you like getting sexually assaulted before you fly. 3 states have bills saying, pending bills saying, that is a felony to touch someone's private areas without probable cause. Marijuana, to the liberal states. Marijuana. 16 states have nullified the unconstitutional federal war on drugs by saying that it's legal for medical purposes. It's been decriminalized in many states, including right here in Rhode Island. It's fully legal in 2, and Rhode Island now has a pending bill to make marijuana legal. It doesn't matter if you like marijuana or not. It matters that the federal government does not have the authority under the Constitution to regulate personal, victimless decisions. And of course, the reason we're all here today, there are 20 plus states with firearm freedom acts pending, which will seek to nullify any of these unconstitutional federal regulations of our natural right codified in the Second Amendment. So the Second Amendment, it is a natural right. It's codified in the Constitution. It's not granted by the Constitution. And it is in pursuit of the natural right of self-determination beautifully articulated in the Declaration of Independence. If we are not armed, how can we carry the truths forth that are stated in the Declaration of Independence? The ability to throw off a tyrannical regime. A toothless tiger cannot do that. So when the traditional checks and balances fail, and if state nullification fails, which I don't believe it will, and government becomes abusive and restricts more freedoms than it preserves, the final check and balance is the Second Amendment and the Declaration of Independence. And I believe because we have the Second Amendment, we're never going to need it. But if we take the power from the people, if we take the ability of the people to exercise those truths declared in the Declaration of Independence, it fundamentally changes our relationship to government. We are no longer its master. But because we have the power, and we are able to throw off the chains that restrict our freedom, we will remain a free country. And if we don't have the Second Amendment, think of how dark the United States becomes. Look at what we're facing, all the affronts I named about the NDAA and drones. It's like, they're doing that when we're armed. Imagine if the people didn't have the ability to counter a tyrannical government, what they would be doing. If we don't have the Second Amendment, the United States becomes a dark place, and I fear for the world. If the power of the United States gets taken over by tyranny, all bets are off, and all these people internationally who are saying the United States citizens should give up their guns, they should really think twice. So if we disarm, these usurpations will only get worse. So I think when we look at the Second Amendment, we have to look at it through the law of proportionality. Our homeland is becoming militarized. You have the DHS that just purchased $1.5 billion. DHS is domestic. $1.5 billion hollow point rounds. Hollow points are not for the range. They're for killing people. That's approximately 5 hollow point bullets for every U.S. citizen. Boom. You've got 30,000 drones coming. You have the NDAA, you have the Patriot Act, you have the new presidential kill list they just released their memo on, stating its reasons for the presidential assassinations of U.S. citizens to be legal. And you got to read it, it's amazing. They turned the definition of the word intimate into its antonym. It's a scary, scary document. And of course, what the common soldier showed us, the town of Johnston, our local police forces are becoming militarized. So our arms that we have now are barely enough to keep meaning in the Second Amendment and the Declaration of Independence. What we're up against, if you think about it, what we have now is barely enough. And they're discussing saying, you can't have 30 of these in a clip. Obama's saying you can't have 30 of these in a clip. At the same time, he's giving tanks and F-16s to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt.
Yeah.
It's Orwellian doublespeak. It's just insane that this guy would even have the gall to say that law-abiding American citizens can't have 30 of these, but the Muslim Brotherhood can have some of our most advanced weaponry. So the conversation should not be about stopping our ability to be armed. The conversation needs to be about stopping the police and surveillance state. It's about stopping the militarism in this country. It's about stopping the degradation of our fundamental constitutional rights. So to those who want to limit our ability to have firearms, I say, you first.
Yeah.
That was Blake Filippi from the 10th Amendment Center. I'd like to introduce someone that has a short but very personal, very important message about the Second Amendment. This is Steve North.
Thanks for coming today. Remember, right now you're in a gun-free zone.
Better leave, I don't feel safe.
You stay right there. You're good. But I want to talk about Second Amendment crime briefly. And we can talk about Chicago, Detroit, New York City. I was the victim of a violent crime because the state of Rhode Island does not allow me to open carry. I had to leave my handgun at home. I picked up a hitchhiker near a broken down car in a snowstorm out in West Greenwich, of all places, late at night. It wasn't his car. All was said and done, I spent 10 days in the intensive care unit of Kent Hospital with 33 stab wounds, a punctured lung. I was beaten over the head with a wrecking car. He took an empty wallet. State Police of Rhode Island investigated. Their determination basically was he was somebody I knew, or it was a drug deal that went bad, and, well, you got what you wanted, kid. Never found the guy. They never found him. He got away with it. In this city, about 40 years ago, an aunt of mine who lived here was stabbed to death by a guy who had already beaten someone to death with a baseball bat and did about 5 or 6 years. Why aren't they punishing criminals? That's what gets me. We have a governor's office in this very building who is protecting a federal felon who shot a guy in a bank robbery. The feds want it. The governor's protecting him here because this guy faces the needle. Let him go. Let the feds get rid of this scum. We need to punish people. Our legislators are not enforcing the laws they have on the books, yet they call for more, and they coddle these criminals. You want to do something about gun crime? You make it a mandatory 10-year sentence, no parole. A sentence that runs consecutively with other sentences. That's all I'm going to say for the moment. Thanks. Be careful on the road.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, I have a special honor. Someone who has stood up on point for quite some time. The courage that this man presents is a force to be reckoned with. He is an inspiration to a great number of Americans across this nation. He flew in from Montana late last night on the red eye and showed up extra late. And I want everybody to try to understand what an important moment this is for Rhode Island, to be able to introduce the founder of Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes. Hey, I'm no big deal. I'm just another ex-paratrooper and American patriot. I come from a long line of warriors who have served this nation. Both my father's side of the family, my mother's side of the family. My great uncles all fought in the Pacific in World War II as Marines. My mother's side, my grandfather, my dad's side fought the Battle of the Bulge as an infantryman. My grandfather on my mother's side of the family was a ball turret gunner in the B-17 who did not make it back. So they're the true heroes. My father-in-law, who's now passed away, lied about his age and joined the Marine Corps at the age of 15. And his date of enlistment was December the 10th, 1941. He fought across the Pacific as a young teenager and fought, including at Iwo Jima. And those are the true heroes. And they fought so hard against an external enemy. And yet they came home, and I talked to a World War II veteran, Warren Bodecker in Montana, who was another hero of World War II. And he said, you know, we fought so hard against the external enemies, the fascists and the communists, but we did not pay enough attention to the domestic enemies of the Constitution. This last October, I took him on an honor flight to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., and it was bittersweet for him and many of the other World War II veterans because they all had the same regret in their hearts. But they came home and focused on raising families and providing for themselves and their families, and they did not pay enough attention to these oath-breaking den of vipers that are in every state legislature and inside the U.S. Congress as well. The long line of Americans who have died and bled for liberty stretches all the way back to Lexington Green and all the way forward to right now in the sands of Iraq and Afghanistan and here in America. If we let their sacrifice be in vain, our children will curse our names for giving away their birthright of liberty. We will desecrate the tombs of our fathers and our grandfathers, and we will also desecrate our own family honor for our children. So we have to stand now. It's our turn. It's so much easier to stand against a foreign invader, so much easier to see the enemy outside the gate, so much more difficult to see the enemy inside the gate, and to realize that your fellow citizens can be suckered and tricked into giving up their liberty. It's amazing to me that we even have this discussion now about whether or not the American people should be disarmed. You don't even have to refer back to the experience of the Founding Fathers and the lessons of history that they had learned, both by watching what had happened in other countries and then in their own experience of facing oppression by their own government. You don't have to refer to that. Just look back to the 20th century and to the tyranny and mass murder of Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Pol Pot, or the Pinochet in South America, or Franco, the fascist over Spain. All of these are examples, whether they come from the left or the right. Who cares what label they hold? They were tyrants, they were despots, they were dictators, and every one of them murdered their own people. They murdered their political opponents. They murdered anybody they didn't like and they scapegoated and blamed, whether it be the Jews and gypsies of Germany, homosexuals, whoever. In Stalinist Russia, it was the kulaks, the independent farmers, who were blamed, and then they were purged. They were starved out intentionally, or put in the gulags and froze to death. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian dissident, says that in the gulags, they look back and they realize their mistake. He said, how we burned in the camps later, wondering what things would have been like if we had realized we had nothing to lose. And instead of paling in terror for the knock of the door in the middle of the night, we set up an ambush down in the hall, using picks, pokers, axes, whatever was at hand. Despite Stalin's thirst, the machine would have ground to a halt without the willing tools and implements of oppression. That's an important insight. And he said, we did not understand the full situation. They did not know what was going to happen. And he said, but what is more important is we did not love freedom enough, and we deserved everything that happened thereafter. We can look at that experience, add it to the founders' wisdom, and you do not have an excuse for not knowing the full situation. If you allow yourself to be disarmed, this country is done. This government is so, as Blake pointed out earlier, is already so corrupt and so far outside the bounds of the Constitution on both sides of the aisle. Republicans were just as bad as the Democrats. Bush was a traitor to the Constitution. The most violated, he trampled on the Bill of Rights left and right. It was during his reign, I call it that intentionally, during his reign that you had Katrina. We had house-to-house searches, unlawful searches, and disarmament of peaceful Americans just trying to defend their homes. That was a big wake-up call for a lot of people, including guys in current service in the military and police who saw their brothers, who were oath-sworn to defend the Constitution, they saw them violating the rights of the people and obeying unlawful orders. That's one of the reasons I started Oath Keepers. But the other big reason, even more fundamental than that, was early on, right after 9/11, almost immediately, that attack on the United States was used, and the fear and anger of the people was used as the excuse for giving up fundamental liberties, such as the Fourth Amendment, right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, such as the right to jury trial, guaranteed in Article 3 of the Constitution itself, but also reinforced with grand jury indictment in the Fifth Amendment and actual jury trial in the Sixth Amendment. All of these core lessons of the founders were set aside, and the argument from the neocons was, well, this is different now. The world's a different place. We must get rid of these arcane notions of due process, including for Americans.
and we have to fight fire with fire. These terrorists trying to kill us, we have to do whatever it takes. That was the excuse given the American people. And in the name of fighting the war on terrorism, the Bush administration claimed the power of the president to use military force, military detention, military trial against anyone, including any American citizen, in direct violation of the Constitution. Article 3 tells you exactly what must be done with an American citizen accused of making war against his own country or aiding the enemy. That is the crime of treason, defined in Article 3, Section 3. And what's it tell you must be done with that person? Requires a public trial in an Article 3 court. Requires 2 witnesses to the same overt act. Extra procedural protections, as Blake can confirm. Nowhere in the law, anywhere else, is a requirement of 2 witnesses. Or it requires confession in open court. But the plainest constitutional provision, directly on point, is being violated. And not just by Bush. Now Obama has taken up the same claim of power and continued this. It is a bipartisan assault on our Constitution by both parties. It's going to require a bipartisan defense of the Constitution by every American. I'm an American first. I'm not a Republican first or a Libertarian first. I've never been a Democrat, but either Republican or Libertarian. When I get sick and tired of the Republican Party, I vote Libertarian. But I'm an American first. And I know some good Democrats who do stand for the Constitution. In fact, I would take them in my foxhole any day of the week over some friggin' oath-breaking traitor like John McCain or Lindsey Graham. Or Peter King from New York, who just came out in favor, of course he's in favor of every statist destruction of the Constitution that comes through the pike, but he's also just come out in favor of an assault weapons ban, in favor of a magazine capacity ban. That is a traitor within the ranks of the Republican Party. And so the Republicans have to get their heads straight and understand that you need to clean your own house first. Purge out the oath breakers in your own party. Start there. Let Democrats worry about Democrats. Hey, I won't vote for a Democrat who violates the Constitution either. But especially within your own party, if you're a Republican, you need to clean out those oath breakers. And we see them right now. We just saw them in New York. How many Republicans voted along with that nonsense that Cuomo passed in the middle of the night? So every one of them was a traitor and an oath breaker. And I don't use the term traitor lightly. As I said, treason is making war on the American people. That's what they're doing. When they want to set aside your right to jury trial and deny that of you, when they want to disarm you, they are following directly in the footpath of what the King and Parliament did, which compelled our forefathers to fight a bloody revolution, a desperate revolution against the most powerful military in the world at the time. Among the grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence is he has in many cases deprived us the benefit of trial by jury. And as you know, the fighting finally happened after a long train of abuses when they attempted to come and seize their arms April 19, 1775. But don't forget, when they were coming to get their guns, they were also coming to get people. They were coming to snatch the leaders of the resistance, who they perceived as the leaders. They were hoping to defang the snake and take out the leadership. And that was Sam Adams and John Hancock in Massachusetts. So were they going to get a jury trial? No. They were going to take off to some brig ship in the harbor of Boston, never to be seen again. They'd have rotted away down in the holds of that ship. If they were lucky, they'd have gone to England for a trial in England. All of these things, this long chain of abuses they suffered, were violations of not just the rights of Englishmen, which is what they first stood on, but ultimately they stood on their natural rights. And when they fired those shots April 19, 1775, there was no Second Amendment. They couldn't point to a Second Amendment right to bear arms. It was a natural right of a human being to defend themselves, to preserve their life, their liberty, and their property. It can also expand on the long-standing tradition of Englishmen to be in the militia. As Mr. Daly pointed out earlier, the genius of the founders, even before there was a constitution, was the understanding that the people themselves must hold the ultimate power in the government. And in this country, under the design of the founders, you hold the military power in your own hands in the form of the militia. You hold the judgment of your fellow American in your own hands in the form of the jury. The government cannot take your life and liberty from you. Only your fellow Americans can. Only a jury of your peers, not the governor, not the president, not Mr. Brennan in the friggin' CIA, the snuff list architect. He doesn't have the right to judge you and sentence you. Only your fellow Americans do. It's supposed to be your fellow Americans who hold the military power in their hands. And only they can use force against you inside the United States. Article 1, Section 8 is clear. It says Congress has the power to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, to suppress insurrections, and to repel invasions. Who is the militia? It's us. Only we can be used internally against each other or ourselves, just like the jury is us. The whole point of that is that you cannot have a standing army. It's easier to have a standing army abuse the people, but if we are the military force, how can we be used to tyrannize ourselves? It can't be done. It cannot be done. If the national government were to call forth the militia for any other purpose other than what's in Article 1, Section 8, or to execute unconstitutional laws, which are not law at all, what could be the response of the state militias and the governors of the states? No. Go pound sand. Do it yourselves. So without their support, they could not do it. That's the counterbalance. It's not just the courts. We have gotten way too far. I graduated from Yale Law School. I know what I'm talking about. The worship of the courts has gotten way out of hand in this country. It's gotten to the point now where you have the spectacle of Congress saying, well, we'll just pass what we think is right and let the courts decide whether or not it's wrong. How is that in keeping with their oath? Their oath is, I swear to uphold and defend whatever I think is right until the court says that it's wrong. The same goes for every officer, from the president down to the local dog catcher. Federal and state takes that same oath. And it's not just to do whatever and follow the orders of the president until the courts say it's wrong, or do whatever Congress says until the courts say it's wrong, or do whatever Governor Cuomo says until the courts say it's wrong. Just the other day, the National Sheriff's Association issued this letter, which was like schizophrenic. It says, on the one hand, we stand for, we support the rights conferred by the Second Amendment, which in itself is ridiculous. The Second Amendment does not confer any rights. It secures and protects rights that already exist. It doesn't say that people hereby have a right to bear arms. It says the right to bear arms should not be infringed. Just like the First Amendment doesn't say people hereby have a right to free speech and assembly and freedom of religion. It says these rights should not be infringed. But then it goes on, after that error, then it goes on to say, but a sheriff doesn't have any power to judge the lawfulness of constitutionality of the law. And basically they'll just enforce anything passed by the Congress, anything passed by the state legislature, until some court tells them no. Was that their oath? No. Just like in the military, when Lieutenant Calley in Vietnam, during the My Lai massacre, he defended himself by saying, hey, I was just following orders. I was following the orders of my superior officers. That's no friggin' defense. And he didn't have the luxury of waiting for some court down the road to rule that order to be unlawful. He had a duty on the spot right there to say no. And because he did not say no to an unlawful order, he was guilty and he was sentenced. Just like at Nuremberg, when the Nazis defended themselves. They said, oh, we were just following orders. That's no defense. You had an obligation, you had a duty to say no, to stand up, even at risk of your own life, is what we told them before we hung them up. The same stands true today for every single oath-sworn officer in this country. I don't care who they are. It can be from the legislature, it can be in the executive branch, judicial branch, law enforcement, which is part of the executive branch. They all have that duty and responsibility to make a determination on the spot of whether the order is lawful or not and to refuse it. And that goes for any friggin' law. I don't care if Cuomo wants it and the legislature passes it, for example, in New York, and then I don't care even if the judges say it's okay. Well, first of all, before you get to a judge, you have a duty and responsibility to say no. But what if the judge says it's okay? But then, what do you do then? Do you just say, oh, okay, the judge said it's okay, now I gotta do it? Is that right?
No.
Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the Supreme Court is the final and sole arbiter of the meaning of the Constitution. That does not exist in the text, just like martial law is nowhere in there. And even in Marbury versus Madison, the case everyone points to, nowhere in that case does it say that. They just said, hey, a judge has a duty as part of the function of a judge to determine whether or not a law is unconstitutional. But that does not mean that the president doesn't also have that duty responsibility. That does not mean that a senator or a congressman does not have the same duty. They still do. They're not off the hook. It's not just up to the courts. We don't live under an oligarchy of a bunch of lawyers in dresses. Everyone here has a duty responsibility to stand up when a law is unconstitutional, even if the court says it's okay. Otherwise, what is the point of their oath? When a judge enters the position of being a judge, they swear an oath too. I swear to support and defend the Constitution. Well, if they get to determine what the Constitution means, why are they swearing an oath to the Constitution? They should just swear an oath, I swear to support and defend whatever I think is right, or whatever I say goes. That's not their oath. The Constitution exists outside the judges too. And the states have a duty, as Blake pointed out earlier. The states have a duty to step up and stand up and interpose themselves when even all three of the branches of the federal government go nuts. They went nuts in Dred Scott and said a black man can never be a citizen of any state, even a northern free state. And rebellion against that, you saw the fugitive slave laws being nullified in the North. But long before that, with the Alien Sedition Act, which was another gross violation of the Constitution, a direct violation of the First Amendment, what was the response to Jefferson and Madison? Did they go hat in hand to the Supreme Court, saying, oh, judges of the Supreme Court, the Federalist judges of the Supreme Court, please defend the First Amendment, please rule this to be unconstitutional. Until then, our hands are tied. We must enforce this until you decree from on high that it's not right. They didn't do any of that. They said, no, right now, at ground zero, the state, and every officer in this state, has a duty to declare this blatantly unconstitutional, which was obvious what it was. Imprisoning a newspaper editor for criticizing the president, is that unconstitutional? The guy in the street, anyone can see that. You don't need to wait for some stupid judge to say it. You get a duty, they said. This is James Madison, the guy considered to be the father of the Constitution, and Thomas Jefferson, talking to the Kentucky legislature and Virginia legislature. You have a duty to declare it null and void from inception, declare it unconstitutional, and to interpose yourselves and defend the citizens of these states against it. That's the duty. Long before any court even hears the case, that's your duty. So, that's what must happen against any violation of the Constitution. The E1 private in the Marine Corps or the Army has the duty to say no. His commander, his NCO, his gunnery sergeant, has the duty to say no. His company commander has the duty to say no. The battalion commander has the duty to say no, and on up the line. And among peace officers, same thing. The rank and file beat cop has the duty, an obligation to say no. And his NCO, his sergeant, his shift sergeant, his lieutenant, his captain, the police chief, the sheriff, every one of them has an obligation and duty to say no. And hey, yeah, they might lose their job, just like a soldier might be court-martialed or even shot in wartime if it goes the wrong way. You might have corrupt judges, you might have a corrupt commission, but that doesn't absolve them of the duty to do it. I was willing, I served as a paratrooper in the Army, I almost died twice during service. I was willing to die for my country. Every one of you who ever served was willing to die. Every one of us was willing to take a bullet or fall or whatever it was going to be to die for our country. You need to be as resolved in your willingness to take the heat, whether it's for good or bad, in refusing an unlawful order too. I'd rather go to prison, I'd rather be shot up against a wall and shot than to violate my oath. Every one of you has that duty. Now, the current crisis we face right now, as I said down at Paul Fest, we are at a crossroads. The choice now really is between 1775 America and 1935 Germany. If we don't stand hard and resolute right now then we will slide into 1935 Germany. As Blake said earlier, the infrastructure is already in place. DHS is not designed to fight Al-Qaeda. Why do you think they're stocking away billions of rounds of ammo all over the country? What's the NSA spying on Americans for? Is it really to root out Al-Qaeda? Is that who they're worried about? No. You know who they're worried about? They're worried about me. They're worried about you. They're worried about American gun owners. They're worried about the veterans. They're worried about every American patriot who is willing to follow in the footsteps of their fathers and their grandfathers and bleed for liberty. That's who they're worried about. And that's who they intend to fight. It's coming. You might as well just recognize that it's coming, embrace the suck, and deal with it and get ready for it. Now, what will it be like? Well, I said a minute ago the choice between 1775 Germany, or 1935 Germany and 1775 America. Well, that's not really accurate, actually. The choice has already been made. The choice has been made by the American veterans and gun owners and patriots that it will not be 1935 Germany. It will not be a slow slide into a dictatorship with a whimper, afraid to stand up, cowering in fear with a knock on the door. We're smarter even than Solzhenitsyn. We're not going to wait for that moment to come. There will be a fight. So that was my message to down in Florida, to the current serving, is you will not be able to just go along and get along and be the enforcers of tyranny against the American people, because you and I, and you and us veterans, we're too busy killing each other for you to do that. But I don't want to see that happen. The last thing I ever want to see is active duty military and veterans killing each other. For what? And for who? Or the police? For these maggots in political power? These lying, cheating, corrupt to the core traitors? No. Do not spill your blood for them, is the message to the military and police. And we have seen many police officers and sheriffs and police chiefs across the country standing up right now and saying, I will not bleed for them. And saying, I don't really care what anybody in the government says. We're not going to do this. And frankly, they should say also, hey, Governor Cuomo and Mayor Bloomberg and Mr. Obama and the rest of you, if you're so keen on getting this done, you go do it. Strap on the body armor, sling up your M4, and go do it yourselves. Let's see them do it. Because ultimately, without the support of the military, especially, but also the rank and file officers out there in the local police departments, they can't do it. I don't care how many super secret squirrel DHS agents and CIA agents or whatever they get. I don't care how many mercenaries in Blackwater or anywhere else. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the American people. It can't be done. Right. Without the support of the military, even with the support of the military, it'd be a hell of a fight. They need to know that. But without the support of the military, they're done. I give them 2 weeks, tops. If the military were simply to do what the East German Army did in 1989, when the wall was about to come down, when the people demanded an end to the corrupt communist regime over them, they stood down. The Army of East Germany said no when the Communist Party ordered them to go crush the peaceful mass demonstrations. Without the support of the East German Army, the Communist Party was done. The Stasi secret police were powerless. They were running and hiding, taking off their insignia they were so proud of, and trying to pretend like they were just average soldiers and average beat cops. Without the support of the army, they were cooked. And if the East German military can get it right, so can ours. So don't give up on them. Reach out to every one of them. Remind them of their oath. Put a billboard up outside of one of their friggin' bases. We got a billboard campaign right now. You can help donate to that, but I don't care if you go do it yourself. Go get a billboard, let us know where it is, we'll give you the artwork, whatever you want, we'll help you. Get a billboard up, remind them of their oath. It cannot be done without them. I don't care how bloodthirsty, how corrupt, how evil the people in power at the top are, how much they want to take away your rifles. I don't care what they want. It can't be done without the military support. And the same goes for the sheriffs. Your sheriff is the most important person in the country right now. Not because he has some sort of secret special power under the Constitution, it's because he's oath sworn. But the one thing he does have is the security of being elected by the people. He can't be fired by anybody except you. That's his real power, and you are his real power. So it's critical that you focus on your counties right now. I would say, if you're going to focus your effort on anything, focus it on the military, and then focus it on your sheriffs and your county. Is your county a Milan-LeBay County? Is it a come-and-take-it county? Or is it a bend-over-and-take-it county? Which one is it? Find out right now. What you should do is give them a deadline. April 19th is coming right up. I think it's a perfect deadline. And you say, that's the deadline. Sheriff, police chief, county commissioners, April 19th, 2013 is your deadline. Clock's ticking. By that day, you need to decide which side you're on. Either you stand with Captain Parker and his men, either you're a patriot or you're a friggin' redcoat. You choose right now. Let us know by that deadline. They chose that day. All the farmers around them chose that day. We are choosing right now. Make them understand that veterans and the gun owners in your community have chosen the patriot side, and now you're just waiting to hear their answer. And when April 19th comes, if they don't give you a clear answer in defense of the Constitution, in defense of your natural right to keep and bear arms, your natural right of self-defense, if they don't stand up hard by that date, you should declare them a redcoat. And then immediately file for recall if that's available in your state. Immediately demand their resignation. And then from that day on, their name is mud. Their political career is over. Done. And whether they're a Republican or Democrat, you will never vote for them again, ever. Never again. They are not fit to serve in public office if they won't take a hard stand. And use the gun issue. Frankly, it's the greatest gift we have right now. It's waking up more Americans now than anything I've ever seen. Use it. It's not the only thing that's important, obviously. The whole Bill of Rights is worth defense. All of it matters. It all works together. But it's the one thing now that should be a clear line. If they will not stand in defense of your right to self-preservation and self-defense and your duty to be the militia as the people, they will not defend that. They won't defend anything. So make that your litmus test right now. And if they will not stand, declare them a redcoat and purge them out of office. So that's really all I have to say. We have a Milan-LeBay Pledge website, milanlebaypledge.org. I encourage you to go there. On there is already a general pledge. We'll have one for current serving police officers very soon, military. We're also going to use that to help launch this Milan-LeBay County project, where we focus on all our counties. So I call on you now to focus. Consider it a sprint. From here until April 19th is a hard sprint in your county. Set up a rally on that day, make that the deadline, and then do a public declaration of who's on which side within your county on that day. And then do another sprint after that. We don't know how much time we have left. We'll do it in short 3-month sprints. And work hard, focus on the guys with the guns, and God bless America.
I want everybody here and the people watching at home to realize what just happened. This is history. It seemed like an insurmountable problem that we may be facing here in America, but we just heard the answer. This is a crisp, clear solution that was given to us.
Part of the solution. I never claimed that Oath Keepers is the whole solution. It's just part of it.
But honoring that oath and what's written right here in the Constitution, these are the answers that have been handed down to us. And it's our time to pick up the ball. Thank you very much, sir.
No, thank you.
I'd like to introduce a very dear friend of mine, someone who inspires me greatly. He keeps saying that I'm the one that inspired him because he saw my video of my very first time public speaking since I crashed and burned in 12th grade in front of 10 other people. Was right out here on these steps, which by the way, it's snowing pretty decently, but there's an Oath Keeper flag blowing in the breeze and a banner. We have national media down there covering the snowstorm. I don't see any national media covering the real storm that's traveling across traveling across America right now. This is the state chapter president for Connecticut State Chapter President John Beadler.
Thank you. Short few words. I was really brought up here to be the sexy male model for the new People shirt. I don't know if you've seen the back of it, but read the back.
Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here.
You have these available, and the thought is, Brandy has heard me say it, don't just think about what you're going to do. Definitely do that, but don't stop there. Step up, speak up about what you're going to do. Be proud, put it out. This is what I'm going to do. Nobody's going to take that. Being a patriot is hard. You know how many steps it was I had to climb to come up here? And Randy talked about Stuart flying in last night. No, it was this morning. It was turned in there. Know how tough it is that you have to call your legislator? You had to come out here. It's frickin' snowing. God, it's tough being a patriot. Think about if you didn't have the opportunity to stand here and talk, to defend your family, your property, your neighborhood, your community, the American people. That's the scariest damn thing I've ever thought of in my life. Absolutely incredible. I'm going to be very short. I'll try to do this. I never can because it's so dear to me, but I live with the horrible thought. I'm sorry. One day my grandson, Cameron, might come to me and say, Grampy, why didn't you stop them when they stole my future, when they stole my country? My grandson's never going to say that to me. He may come to my grave saying, my Grampy was fighting to stop that. There was nothing that he wouldn't do. No snowstorm, no freaking 55 steps, no problem with talking in front of people, no problem with talking to legislators, and as Stuart said, you're wrong, you stink, get out. You don't represent me, no matter where we're coming from. Everybody has to do that. You gotta stand, you gotta wear your passion, your patriotism and everything on your chest. Say it to your wives, your sons, your kids, your school teachers, anybody. Say it loud continually. I support the Constitution. I support my country. I am not letting anybody in the state capitals of Washington take away my rights and my freedoms. I will not have my grandson ever say that to me. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for letting me come. And how about these shirts?
All right. Thank you, John. Waters over here.
Is there a full bottle of water around here someplace?
All right, thank you, John. This is John Beadler from the Connecticut State Chapter President. I would like to introduce Jim Hazard. He's from New Hampshire. He's a New Hampshire State Moderator for Oath Keepers up there. Thank you.
What an incredible thing it is today for all of us to be here and join together as patriots. It's just said, boy, it's a tough thing being a patriot coming all the way down here. Excuse me.
My bad, sorry.
It's okay. It's a tough thing being a patriot. I came all the way down from a mountain from top of New Hampshire, and I know I'm going to have to go back to plow out about 4 feet of snow. But I don't care if I get stuck down here. I'll just hunker down and find a hotel and make it good. But, you know, that's the whole message here. It's all about heart. And it's all about us standing up individually to make the effort at a local level. And that's what I've been doing in our community. I've been going down to the commissioner's office, and started sitting in on all their meetings locally. And now it's on the local cable network there, it's in the local newspapers there, and it's just one voice, one t-shirt, being down there, but they all know they're being watched. They all know that they have to be held accountable to the light of the Constitution and everything that it stands for. We work hard for everything that we have. This nation's hurting in so many different ways. And I can't begin to say, I'm just so sick and tired of working as hard as I've worked to have them taken away from me. I mean, I got my arm here. You know, am I going to let them take my arm? Well, if I got my gun in the other hand, in my hand, am I going to let them take that too? No way. I'll trip it off and club it over the head with it if I have to. But the bottom line is, again, it's all heart. It's all about the progressive realization of worthwhile dreams and goals and the pursuit of that. But we have to defend the Constitution and put everything in it you got, because now's the time. There is no more time to wait. So get on board and hit them at the local level, and I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my honor to introduce a very dear friend, fellow patriot, and someone who has quite a gift of getting people together. He's got over 55,000 followers on Facebook. Over 11,000 people have signed their name to a document that he introduced. This is Dean Fashon from the Pledge of Renewal.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I know the day is getting long. I've got a very short piece. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah. Just want to be a little bit mindful of the weather we have. It inspired what I wrote. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a ragtag colonial army, veterans of countless engagements, some victories and many defeats. The groans of men, feet wrapped in rags, stomachs aching for a morsel, reduced by their elements to huddling together for the warmth of their fellows. No stranger to this was George Washington's most trusted general, Nathaniel Greene, a native of Rhode Island. Appointed quartermaster general when no one else would take that job, he helped save that army from complete dissolution through his vigorous intelligence and the expenditure of his own private fortune. It was he who said, "We fight, get beat, rise and fight again." Welcome to our Valley Forge. We have been on this path for 4 long years, longer for many others, for myself 4 years. We have known a few small victories and we have suffered many large defeats. We have pulled back and we have pulled back more. But the Second Amendment is our beachhead. From here, there is no pulling back. Indeed, from here, we must begin the long march to reclaim so many other rights upon which an overbearing government has long practiced. Failure is not an option. Freedom and liberty hang in the balance. So we gather in united purpose to defend our unalienable right to self-defense against tyranny and oppression, the right to keep and bear arms. Not as a threat of arms, but to gird our words with the sobering finality intended by the Second Amendment. In truth, our victory is uncertain as the Continental Armies before a vastly superior force, because our adversary is not merely a man, not his backers, nor his followers, not even all of them combined, although they do task us to distraction. No, our adversary is an idea handed down through the ages from elite hands to elite hands. An idea which rendered in its simplest form is this: we cannot be trusted with our freedom. And sadly, we must grant this. We have not been a perfect nation. We drove the red man from his lands. We stole the black man from his home. We have butchered innocence and called it in the name of freedom. And we've done more than that. With true freedom comes awesome responsibility. We must carry the torch lit by our founding fathers, and we must try to stand upon their shoulders and shine that light as brightly as it has ever shone before. And then we must avoid the mistakes of vanity, of petty pride, and of expedient compromise. In so trying, with all possible humility, we cannot assure our victory, but we can assure our worthiness of freedom. People ask, where are the founding fathers of today? Do they even exist? I think they do. The people here today, we're standing beside them. And those likewise gathered in capitals across the nation. We are the ones who carry the torch. We are the founding fathers' children. May we have a peaceful year, but having done all we possibly could to fend off the growing darkness, should peaceful means at long last prove inadequate to the task, then may we know the peacefulness of a clear conscience. And what happens next will be in the hands of our Creator, the fountain of decency from whom flows our desire for all men to live in peaceful freedom. We fight, get beat, rise, and fight again. Godspeed.
Thank you. That was Dean Fashon from the Pledge of Renewal. Make sure you check out the website, Pledge of Renewal. I would like to introduce a good friend that helped out with the last Second Amendment rally. Everybody must be getting the message by now that the Second Amendment is pretty important. This is Ed Doyle from the famous Ed TV.
Does anybody know there's a game, and I can't think of the name of it. It's a bunch of wooden blocks all put together, and you try to push out a single piece. What is it? No, that's not it. That's not it.
You try to push out a piece and it doesn't. So
yeah, you push out the pieces, and eventually, when enough pieces are out, the whole thing falls. I know what it's called. Obama's got a name for it. It's called America. And that's what's going on. This isn't about being able to keep my AR-15 because it's cool looking. It isn't about being able to keep my Colt revolver because it's cool looking. It's about America. It's about every single one of us that are out there and keeping this country strong. The Second Amendment is what does that. And what these legislatures here in Rhode Island, all the way up to Washington, have forgotten is they've forgotten the original reason on why they're there.
Yes, I'm sorry.
They're there because of what was done back in the 1700s and because of that Constitution and all of those amendments. Otherwise, they would never have their asses in those chairs in the first place. And they've forgotten that. What we are doing is we're not out there saying, I want to keep my guns. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're saying, wake up, lawmakers. Wake up, legislatures. You're there to do what we want. Not for you to tell us what we're going to do. That's what this fight is all about. That's what this is about. So, the only thing that I can say is, it doesn't matter about one group called Gun Rights Across America, another group called Second Right. There's a million groups out there. But they all make up one group. The citizen of the United States of America. And that's what we're trying to keep. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. That was Ed Doyle. Check him out on the internet. I want my Ed TV. You too. Okay, we have a very special moment coming up now. I would like to get everybody's attention. This is a very solemn moment. I would like to remind those that took their oath at one time during their life that this is your opportunity to renew that oath in a very special, very deep manner. For those that have never taken the oath to defend the Constitution, I would like to offer this opportunity to take this oath for the very first time. Do not take this lightly. This oath lasts for the rest of your life. If you would like to join us, I will be reading the oath. Just insert your name when I insert mine. I'd like to ask everybody to remove their hats and raise their right hand. I, Randy Swanson, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Yes! I would like to thank everybody for showing up today. Please make sure every opportunity you have like this to transfer your contact information, get on each other's Christmas card lists so you can get it mailed to your address. Your friends know how to get in touch with you. I would like to wrap up this event with a message from someone who felt in their heart the same passion that many of us do here. It's a message from Thomas Jefferson. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and purpose, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people multitudes brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow the spirit of wisdom those to whom thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise amongst the nations of the earth. In the time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the days of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail. All of which we ask through our Lord. Amen.
I just have one thing. I'm Randy's wife, and I want to thank everybody that came here today. This is like great to see that we had people come here today, because everybody knows what Rhode Island is like. And just remember the troops, and remember what they went through years ago. And I never thought that I would be here in the situation that we're at. And I have to tell you, I'm scared. So, I'm very scared. We have a person that was filming for somebody, and I guess we have a camera unclaimed. So if we have a camera that somebody had out here, is this yours, Stuart? Okay. I also want to thank Paulette for going around and collecting emails. Thank you, everybody. If you've not seen The National Oath Keeper site, please go on to it. And also, there are individual state chapters, and we just, I believe, recruited a Rhode Island person now who did not know that the national site had state chapters. So, word of mouth works. Please tell everybody what's going on, get off their beds, get off their chairs, get out of their house, and start to get your family involved in what's going on, because you need your families and your neighbors and your loved ones, even your loved ones who don't support what you're doing, they're going to look for you when crap comes to your doorstep. You just need to keep going on with what you're doing and try to get everybody to wake up in the process. And just keep doing what you're doing and keep plugging along, because we are the smart ones and people are going to look for us, and you can just be the little man on the totem pole or the big man up on the totem pole, and we still, as long as we're focused, we can get everybody on board and get everybody to be aware that we have to pay attention. Thank you so much.